Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome back to our Why Polygyny series. Today we're going to talk about one of the very crucial problems that people suffer in polygyny, especially women in polygyny, is the problem of jealousy. Okay, I mean, a lot of the the a lot of the people who are ardent about, the great injustices and oppression resulting from polygyny often speak from an emotive perspective. An emotive perspective meaning that because polygyny lends itself or opens itself up to extreme forms of jealousy, therefore it can never be good. So there's this type of thing. And also because, of course, polygyny also creates an imbalance of power. Since the relationship is a relationship of one to many, it follows that the one person, the husband, has an unfair advantage over, his wives in polygyny. So the first aspect we're going to tackle is the issue of jealousy. Okay. So I'd like to sort of draw an analogy between multiple wives, a man who has multiple wives, and a man who has multiple children. So at some levels, people might feel uncomfortable about this analogy, if you haven't noticed, because we are setting up an analogy. We are basically in this analogy making children and women analogous to each other. And one of the reasons why we are doing that is because in many ways children and women do have a lot in common. And in our tradition, it is actually children and women that are needing to be protected. And when people go to war, it's often that they're going to war to protect their women and children, type of thing. So children and women, there's a lot in common. The historical common factor is the issue of dependence, meaning even in modern times, when you fill out applications, job applications, forms, and so on, they ask you how many dependents do you have. Okay, just who all are relying on you, financially, and needing to be looked after by you. And so, of course, those include your women and children. So women and children fall under this category of dependence. And so I'm going to create this analogy between women and children. Okay. Now we all, or most of us anyway, have read a little bit of psychology, came across a concept called sibling rivalry. Now, what is sibling rivalry? It's when siblings, brothers and sisters, compete with each other, often vying for the attention of their parents. So this happens from young. You would see kids competing with each other, because they, of course, share these parents in common. And so the parent cannot pay attention to all the children all the time. So what happens is the children basically take turns, with no particular format or no particular rule set as to whose turn it is, but the children take turns to receive individual attention from their parents, if at all. Okay, in some families, Children very rarely receive something like individual attention. They just a collective. They're seen as a collective. Okay, these are the children type of thing. Okay, so in 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 homes, you will often find that children compete with each other. Okay, uh, some people who advocate for small families, cite in fact that in smaller families, children are afforded more opportunities and they have more they get more attention from their parents. So the question is now that if children are compete with one another and feel a sense of jealousy, towards each other with regards to having to vie for the parents' attention, should a father or should parents only have one child? I mean, wouldn't the ideal then be one child who never has to compete or vie for attention, you know, and who never has to experience feeling, a sense of jealousy when, not being given enough attention. Enough attention obviously being relative, because what does it mean exactly? Is it uh, it, are you giving your children enough attention if you talk to them every day? Are you giving them enough attention, if you do their homework with them? Are you giving them enough attention if you watch movies with them? What is enough attention? Okay, it's relative. So, um, should parents therefore only have one child? You know, to eliminate any sibling rivalry, because rivalry is bad. Okay, and people and children uh, having to vie for their parents' attention is bad, or is it? And so this is kind of where I'm coming from. Okay, um, actually, in the tradition of Abraham, in the tradition of our forefathers, and our narrative is that more children is better, not worse. Okay, our narrative is that when children come from homes where they have many siblings, that they are more balanced. They learn how to share. They are less selfish and less demanding. And this ultimately makes a better world. That is our narrative, okay? They are less demanding because they've learned to put aside their need for attention and to get what they want in the interest of the greater good, in the interest of their family, and in the interest of their siblings collectively. So they've learned that it's unfair to always get what you want, because it means that someone else is not going to get any. Okay, so this idea of sharing is caring. So what you would find actually is that children who come from bigger families are often more contented human beings. They are more socially gregarious. They are less consumeristic. Their footprint is very soft upon the earth. Okay, they do not require a whole lot in life. And so what you do find is that um, in the first world, okay, where people have sort of gone into having one or two children or not having children at all, you find a civilization of people who require so much. One person requires so much. I've experienced it personally, where I'm able to, on my income, look after 11 people. 11 people. Um, And then my first world counterparts, I'm from Africa, by the way. My first world counterparts, from Britain and America, and I have siblings in different parts of the world, and friends and so on, require, you know, a salary equivalent to my entire salary just to look after themselves. Now you might say, yes, okay, uh, it's cheaper to live in in Africa than it is, in the United States or in Britain or whatever. But I'm not even factoring that in. I'm saying even when we live in the same location, okay, just lifestyle, okay. Uh, as an African, as a person coming from a big family, having experienced poverty, etc., I require much less. I require much less. I am less demanding of the world, and I, am content uh, to eat simple food and live a simple life relative to my first world peers, you know, even when we travel or live together in various countries in the world, as I have experienced. Okay, and why is that? Different model, okay? Different model, different culture, okay? Uh, the culture of many versus the culture of few. There is this thing about people saying, well, quality, is better than quantity. I found that in many cases where people don't have quantity, they lack quality, especially when it comes to child rearing and families. Okay, smaller families um, may have children who are quote unquote more successful. Perhaps they could afford to send them to better universities, and they end up getting better jobs, and they have more money. Okay, so they quote unquote more successful. But often when you engage with these human beings, you find that there's a certain element of humanity lacking in them, a certain level of consideration, because they've never had to share, basically. Okay, it's as simple as that. Their upbringing was less than fortunate. And of course, in the Abrahamic tradition, we don't measure success based on wealth. Okay, how much money you have doesn't mean doesn't is no indication of how great your humanity is. And in the Abrahamic tradition, your humanity is most important. Okay, how humane you are, how you are, how capable are you, you know, with identifying, um, the needs of other people. So that is sort of more the the aim, and being able to take a step back from yourself and what you think you need, and being able to give up part of what you want, okay, to compromise so as to fulfill the needs of others. And so this is the Abrahamic tradition. This is what we believe in, and these type of values are best obtained through having bigger families. Okay, so I kind of went on a detour now with the whole sibling rivalry thing, but to continue the analogy, uh, so too, when done correctly and with the right people, um, polygyny fosters, a culture of sharing, a culture of caring, a culture of, having to rein in yourself and your jealousy and your anxiety, you know, in the interest of the community of your community, the community of Abraham, the community of believers, you know. Um, and that's sort of this notion of polygyny is that when you have community, when you have bigger families, um, you raise a nation that reaches the next level of consciousness, reaches a very high level of consciousness, a level of consciousness that comes with having to um, constantly go against oneself in order to do the right thing. Okay, and so I know there are many people that saying, well, look, in which way is the man, for example, because now you're saying women need to go against them, their jealousies, they need to rein in their jealousy, they need to try to cooperate with each other in the spirit of Ubuntu, in the spirit of togetherness, working together, mutual cooperation for the benefit of society and the community. Um, but what do men do? You know, I mean, isn't he just fulfilling his lust by marrying, you know, woman and just enjoying himself? Well, frankly, no. The answer is no. He's not. Okay, because there are far polygynous men by far have had sex with far less women, okay, than the average 25-year-old in the modern Western world, okay? Because as polygynous men, we have had sex with our wives. That's it, okay? You slept with your wives. So if you have two wives, you slept with two women. If you have three wives, you slept with three women. If you have four wives, you slept with four women, okay? Myself, you know, being belonging to the former British colony and being socialized in the Western culture, I know for a fact that many, countless young men uh, sleep with countless women, and if you sit one of these guys down, you know, a typical young man who at 30 may still not be married or have a family, but if you sit him down and you say, okay, listen, let's go through the list, right? How many women did you sleep with? He could pull out a list of 10 or 15 women that he may have slept with up to that point, yet he hasn't gotten married, and yet he doesn't have a family. Okay? So if you're saying that polygyny is so that men can practice their lust, no, it's not. Because one never has to. In fact, um, in the modern world, marry anyone to practice your lust, okay? To sleep with women, one never has to marry them. That's not a demand anymore in the modern world. So, um, so saying that, oh, men only marry because, you know, they're trying to fulfill their lust with women, um, no, it doesn't make sense. It's not true because these men never have to then get married. The men never have to get married for that. Okay, um, because then it would not add up. Basically, it would not even make sense. Okay, for men to get married, in that were it only that they needed to have sex with a woman. Okay, frankly, the responsibility of marriage is too great for that to be the only consideration. Okay, the price is just not. The price is just too high. Basically, men who only want to have fun and have sex with women typically don't marry women for that. Okay, they have casual relationships, flings, mistresses, etc., because that type of relationship is more geared towards pleasure seeking. The point of that relationship is pleasure seeking. It's a pleasure It's the equivalent of a pleasure marriage. People just hooking up to have sex, you know, with minimal obligation or responsibility towards each other, or none, often none, no obligation or responsibility towards each other in the relationship. Um, so that's obviously not what polygyny is, okay? Uh, Men who engage in polygyny are looking after and covering, you know, uh, those women that they are married to. Um, in the long term, they are building families and homes, and communities. Um, and so to conclude, what I want to, emphasize again is that less is not more in the Abrahamic tradition. Less is not more, uh, and uh, the idea of quantity over quality is not uh, an Abrahamic idea, because in the Abrahamic faith, um, quality is born from quantity very often. Thank you very much.